there are a few objections that you will experience if you use the protocol that I teach as far as sales training goes. And the most common ones typically are, let me think about it, and let me talk with my kids, or some sort of variation of that. Basically a stalling tactic. And so what I'm about to present to you, word for word, is the script that I use to rebuttal these same objections, and other ones too that pop up that may not be as common, maybe more rare. But the point that you need to remember is to remember the process, okay? Because you can plug in the script into whatever the actual specific objection is, but follow the process, and many times arrive at that. Hopefully maybe there's some sort of proposition you can make or compromise so that you both can reach an agreeable conclusion that's a win-win for both parties. So when somebody says, I need to think about it, I ask them, I said, Mrs. Jones, that's totally fine to understand why you would say that, but more specifically, what I'm curious about is, how do you mean? So now on the surface, that may sound like a dumb rebuttal, because I said, yeah, I get you, but what do you mean? Right? The point is, the reason we say that in the beginning is we want to confirm with them that it's okay. We want to lower their defenses to tell us really what they think, because any objection typically has multiple layers to it. And not everybody is straightforward, blunt, honest. Most people aren't, because we're mostly civil society that we try to respect people, and we don't want to offend others. And so when it comes to objections or resistance, you got to break that layer down. Part of the process is getting them to be open and honest with you so that we're not going to attack them or judge them in return. So the reason we say, hey, that's fine, Mrs. Jones, I totally can understand why you may need to think about this. What you're saying is, I understand you, and I'm not going to be mad about that. And so that lowers them down so that we can get a little bit deeper, because there's always that smoke screen that's thrown up in front of the true objection. So the rebuttal to that is, well, how do you mean? And then you got to be quiet at this point and let them tell you what that thing is. What that could be all sorts of things. I don't know if I can afford this now. I'm not ready to start because the sewage is backed up and I need 2 months before I have the money in the account. That was the most recent objection I heard. And it doesn't really matter what the rebuttal is, okay, because we're following this process. So once you listen to them and you kind of see where they stand, and assuming they're giving you a specific type of objection, you know, where you actually have some context to it, you say, okay, so what you're telling me, so you basically refer it back to them. What you say is, so what you're saying, so I can totally understand, is that your toilet's broke, and it's going to take a lot of money to fix the septic tank, and you're worried about spending the money now. Is that pretty much what you're saying? Yeah, Dave, that's exactly what I'm saying. I mean, you know, this is just something I'm worried about. I don't want to take this out and I have the money. So we've made sure that we understand what their objection was. So then in response to that, I said, well, besides the sewage problem you have, is there any other reason why you wouldn't buy from me today beyond this? So now we're isolating the objection to make sure that that's the only objection, there's not something else. They may say, well, you know, and then I've got this other guy down the street I work with who does my other insurance. Well, there's another objection I got to get over. Most of the time it's just one, and usually it has to do with price. So what I say at that is, I say, okay, so bottom line, so you're saying that this is it. If we could get past this sewage thing, right, where you got to put out all this money, if we get beyond that, then you wouldn't, you're telling me, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but you're telling me that you would do business with me if we could somehow get around the sewage thing from being a price issue with you to pay. Is that correct? Or is there something I'm missing? And usually they say, yeah, that's right. So at this point, we've isolated the objection. We know what in the context they're worried about. And if it's sensible and it's a true objection, but that can be remedied with a potential proposition or compromise, then we can close the deal. If it's a condition, like I'm not on disability, or I'm disabled, but I'm not getting a check, I'm not getting it for 6 months, and I'm broke, well, that's a condition. Truth is, you should have isolated that and been out of the door a long time ago through the pre-qualification process. But if you got to that point and nobody can pay it and they can't pay it, that's a condition. That's not an objection, it's a condition. You can't overcome conditions. You can't overcome objections. So back to the sewage issue, since that seems to be the most relevant here. What I reply to that is I say, here's my proposition to you. Here's the deal. I don't need the money today. Obviously, you've got some bills coming up this month. Why don't we just do this? Let's take the application. Again, I'm not going to send this in immediately, so they're not going to take the money, but let's start it next month, okay? That way, we can set this up to where you'll have your sewage bill paid off, you'll be out of that, and then by next month, no problems, because I don't need the money today. Does that make sense for you? And so they'll either say yes, you'll write it up just in the same way, or they'll say, well, blah, 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 something else pop up. Then you just repeat the process. But again, the process I'm teaching here is affirming why, that it's okay they've got this objection, that you're not going to judge them. How do you mean to get them to lower their barriers, but to also give you more information? Because again, usually an objection is a semblance of context or substance, so you've got to dig a little deeper in a non-confrontational way. Then you confirm what their thoughts were to make sure that that is exactly what they're saying is what you understand, and not taking what they say for granted, and then isolating that objection so to make sure there's not anything else if there was multi-tiered issues going on here, and then proposing an alternative solution that will actually get the deal sold and will actually make it make sense that even though they think initially that it's a problem, that it's really not if they follow these steps that you're going to provide them. And if they can trust you to follow through, that we can get the deal done, they get the insurance they want, and they don't have to worry about that objection getting in the way. Hopefully that makes sense. One other thing I'll mention here is that typically, like I said, most of these issues are price-related issues, or just antipathy, or antipathy is not the right word, apathy. No, it's not so much apathy. It's mostly like feet dragging. You know they need it, but they just are world-class procrastinators, as one great agent said. And so one of the common things we'll hear is, I need to talk with kids. What I've found out, this is a more difficult objection to experience, and how you want to handle this is just say, that's fine, I totally understand that. And when you say you need to talk to your kids, how do you mean? Same process. Let them tell you all the reasons why. And listen to them. Maybe it's a good reason. Maybe it's a non-specific reason. Maybe it's a bad reason. Either way, when I hear them say that, I say, great, let's call them up right now and talk to them on the phone. It's better if I'm here with both of you to help explain things to her versus, you explain what I explain and all the details usually get lost in between. Does that sound okay? I do this because what I find is that's the litmus test to see if this person is serious about this or not. Because many times if they're serious, they'll pick the phone up and they'll make the call and at least try because they respect your time. If they're not serious, they'll give you some claptrap, and they won't necessarily commit to another appointment or any of that other stuff. They'll just kind of put it off without really telling you the truth. So I do that. That's the phraseology I use to handle the talk with the kids stuff, because a lot of the times it's bogus. I've gotten very little sales done when there's a kid involved. It's just a way to push away a salesperson without telling them and being honest. Which brings me to my last point. Just because people have objections, just because there's issues out there, doesn't mean they can all be rebutted. You certainly should try the process I've described. The best thing you can do is leave a house, even without a sale, but knowing that you did everything possible, following the method to ascertain the deal. You don't want to leave a house, pack the bags up before you even try to object or rebuttal the objection, because you may be leaving money in a sale on the table and not be able to help that prospect out. So you've got to at least try. But there's always going to be people in this particular market that are full of crap, and they won't be honest with you. They just want the company. They're really good at playing prospect. I've used this terminology more, and as I'm in this business longer, I'm more confident now than ever. There's some people that just will not ever tell you the truth. They don't mind wasting your time. They don't mind white lying, if you will. As the old saying goes, buyers are liars, and so are people who don't buy. And so there's a lot of truth to that. And the key thing is not to get hung up on those people who you just seem not to be able to close. Because the ones that you can close will follow this process with you, because ultimately they really want this, but they're just not sure that it's the right time. And your job as a salesperson is to extract more information to get more specifics, if you can, and then show them why that's not a big deal anyway, and how you can have a mutually agreed upon solution to do away with that objection, see that's not a big deal, and then to consummate the sale.